But possibly sitting in a jar, a drawer, or even your own wallet right now, it sounds impossible. It sounds like one of those stories people tell but never prove. And yet stories like this are exactly what keep coin collectors awake at night, scanning every detail, every date, every tiny mark under a magnifying glass. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Let's go back to 1979. The United States Mint was producing a brand new coin that year, the Susan B. Anthony dollar. It was meant to be revolutionary, a bold step forward, the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical woman. Millions were struck. They poured out of the mint facilities in massive quantities, destined for banks, vending machines, and everyday transactions. Most people didn't even like them. They were often confused with quarters. They felt unfamiliar. They didn't circulate the way the mint had hoped. And because of that, many ended up forgotten, stored away, ignored, but hidden within those millions of coins. There were anomalies, tiny differences, nearly invisible to the untrained eye. The kind of differences that can transform a $1 coin into something worth thousands, or in extreme cases, even $1 million. Now here's where the mystery begins. Not every 1979 dollar coin is valuable. In fact, most are still worth just $1, but a very small number, a fraction so tiny that most people will never see one, carry unique traits that set them apart from the rest. Collectors have spent decades chasing these rare variations. Some were discovered by accident, a coin picked up at a flea market, another found in an old piggy bank. One even surfaced when someone was simply sorting through loose change late at night, not expecting anything at all. And that's the pattern. These coins don't announce themselves. They don't shine brighter. They don't look magical. They hide, which is exactly why this story matters. Because if you know what to look for, you might be holding something far more valuable than you ever imagined. Let's slow down and focus. You're looking for a 1979 $1 coin. No mint mark. That's important. On most U.S. coins, you'll find a small letter indicating where the coin was minted. A D for Denver, an S for San Francisco. But in this case, the absence of a mint mark tells you the coin was struck in Philadelphia. So the first step is simple. Check the date, 1979, then look just above the shoulder area on the front of the coin. If there's no mint mark, you're on the right track, but that alone isn't enough. Here's where things get interesting. There are subtle design differences in the lettering and the rim. On some rare examples, the details appear sharper, more defined. The spacing between letters may look slightly different. The edge of the coin might feel thicker or more pronounced. Collectors often refer to these as varieties. Now imagine someone casually dropping one of these rare varieties into circulation decades ago. No one noticed. No one cared. It blended in with millions of identical coins, until one day, someone looked closer. That's how discoveries happen, not with experts in labs, but with ordinary people paying attention. Let's pause for a second. Think about how many coins you've handled in your life. Hundreds? Thousands? Maybe more. And how many did you truly examine? That's the difference between missing a fortune and finding one. Now, back to the coin. Another critical factor is condition. Even if you find the right date and no mint mark, the coin's condition plays a massive role in its value. Coins are graded on a scale. The closer they are to their original uncirculated state, the higher their potential worth. We're talking about coins that look almost untouched. Crisp details. No scratches, no wear. A surface that still reflects light in a certain way. These are the coins that collectors fight over, because rarity alone isn't enough. It's rarity combined with preservation. And when those two elements come together, that's when prices can skyrocket into the range of hundreds of thousands. Even $1 million. Let that sink in. A coin worth $1, becoming $1 million. It sounds unbelievable, but it has happened before in the world of coin collecting. Not just once, but multiple times across different coins and eras. And every time it happens, it sends a shockwave through the community, because it proves something powerful. Treasure doesn't always look like treasure. Sometimes, it looks like spare change. Now imagine this scenario. You're cleaning out an old drawer. Maybe it belonged to a parent or grandparent. Inside, you find a small pile of coins, dusty, forgotten. You almost toss them aside, but something stops you. You remember hearing about rare coins. You decide to take a closer look. One coin catches your attention. No mint mark. You turn it under the light. The details seem sharper than the others. The edges feel slightly different. Your heart starts to race. Could this be one of them? That moment, that exact moment, is what drives collectors. It's not just about money. It's about discovery. The thrill of finding something extraordinary in the most ordinary place. But let's stay grounded. Not every coin will be worth a fortune. In fact, most won't. And that's okay, because the real value here is knowledge. When you know what to look for, you give yourself a chance. A real chance. And chances like that are rare. So let's go deeper. Examine the portrait on the front. Susan B. Anthony's profile should appear clean and well-defined. Look at the hair details. Are they sharp or worn down? Check the lettering. Liberty and In God We Trust should be clear and evenly spaced. Any unusual spacing or thickness could indicate a rare variation. Flip the coin. On the reverse side, you'll see an eagle landing on the moon. Pay attention to the feathers. The lines should be distinct. The overall design should look balanced and precise. Now here's something many people overlook: weight and sound. Rare coins sometimes differ slightly in weight due to minting variations. If you have access to a precise scale, it can help confirm your findings, and the sound, when gently tapped, can reveal differences in metal composition or structure. These are small clues, but together they tell a story that could lead to something incredible. Let's reset for a moment, because this is where most people give up. They check one or two coins, don't find anything unusual, and move on. But collectors know better. They know that persistence is everything. The rare coin isn't going to jump out at you. You have to find it, and that means checking again, and again, and again, because the difference between finding nothing and finding $1 million could be one coin, just one. Now think about the emotional side of this. What would it mean to you? Not just the money, but the experience, the story you could tell. The moment you realize that something so small, so overlooked, could change everything. That's powerful, and it's real, because people have lived that moment, ordinary people. No special training, no insider knowledge, just curiosity and attention. That's all it takes. So here's what you do next. Start small. Gather your coins. Look through your change. Check old collections. Ask family members if they have any stored away. Focus on 1979 dollar coins. Look for no mint mark. Examine the details carefully. And most importantly, don't rush. This isn't a race. It's a process. Every coin you check brings you closer to understanding what makes a coin valuable, and that understanding is worth more than you think, because once you develop that eye, that instinct, you'll never look at coins the same way again. You'll start noticing things others miss. You'll see patterns, differences, possibilities, and one day, maybe, you'll find something extraordinary. Let's take one final pause. Picture that coin again, sitting quietly among hundreds of others, no one paying attention, no one realizing its true value until you pick it up, until you look closer, until you see what others didn't. That's the moment everything changes, because hidden within that small piece of metal could be a story worth telling for the rest of your life, and maybe, just maybe, a value that reaches beyond imagination, a value that turns a simple dollar into $1 million. So don't ignore your coins, don't assume they're all the same, because history has already shown us that the most incredible discoveries often come from the most unexpected places, and your next discovery could be closer than you think. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that looks completely ordinary, worn edges, a familiar shine, nothing that would make you stop and stare. Now imagine that same coin quietly being worth $2 million. Not locked in a vault, not displayed in a museum, but possibly hiding in a drawer, a jar, or even your pocket change. That's the kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it has already happened. In 1976, the United States celebrated its bicentennial. Fireworks filled the skies, parades lined the streets, and the U.S. Mint released special coins to mark 200 years of independence. Among them was the Eisenhower dollar, a large, bold coin featuring President Dwight D. Eisenhower on the front and a striking Liberty Bell over the moon design on the back. Millions of Americans held these coins. Millions spent them without a second thought. But buried within that massive production, something unusual happened. Not every coin that left the Denver Mint in 1976 was exactly as it should have been. Some carried subtle differences. Some carried mistakes, and a very small number carried secrets that collectors would later chase with obsession. These are the coins that transform from everyday currency into legends. Now here's where the mystery deepens. The 1976 D Eisenhower dollar. The one struck at the Denver Mint is incredibly common in its normal form. You can still find them today for just a few dollars. That's what makes this story so powerful. Because hidden among those ordinary coins are rare varieties and errors that can push values into the tens of thousands. And in the most extreme, pristine, and rare cases, whispers in the collector world have pushed the narrative toward million-dollar territory. And the difference between a coin worth $1 and one worth life-changing money can come down to details so small most people never notice them. Take a closer look at the mint mark. On a standard 1976 Eisenhower dollar from Denver, you'll see a small D just below Eisenhower's neck on the front of the coin. It's easy to miss. Most people never look twice. But that tiny letter is your first clue. Because the Denver Mint struck millions of these coins, yet only a fraction were produced under conditions that created rare and valuable variations. Now imagine this. A mint worker adjusts a die slightly out of alignment. Another die begins to wear down, creating softer details. A plancher, the blank metal disc, feeds through imperfectly. These small, human, mechanical imperfections create something collectors crave: uniqueness. One of the most important things to look for is doubling. Not the kind you see easily, but subtle doubling in the lettering, especially around Liberty, In God We Trust, or the date. Under magnification, the letters may appear slightly doubled, almost like a shadow. This is called a doubled die error, and it can dramatically increase a coin's value. Now pause and think about that. A coin you've ignored for decades could carry a tiny design shift that turns it into a collector's prize. But that's just the beginning. Another key factor is the condition of the coin. Collectors use a grading scale, and the difference between an average circulated coin and one graded MS-65 or higher, mint state, nearly flawless, can mean the difference between a few dollars and thousands. Coins that were never spent, never scratched, never dulled, those are the ones that rise to the top. Picture a coin sitting untouched in a drawer since 1976. No fingerprints, no wear, preserved by accident. That coin has a completely different story to tell. And then there are the strike qualities. Some 1976 D Eisenhower dollars were struck with exceptional sharpness. The details in Eisenhower's hair, the crisp lines of the Liberty Bell, the clarity of the moon's surface, these features matter. Collectors look for coins that stand out visually, coins that almost look like they were struck yesterday. Now imagine combining all of these factors: a Denver minted bicentennial dollar, a doubled die, a near-perfect strike, flawless condition. That's when things start to escalate. That's when auction prices begin to climb. That's when collectors compete. That's when a coin that once bought a cup of coffee starts being talked about in the same breath as $1 million. It sounds unbelievable, but the coin market has seen dramatic sales before. Coins once dismissed as pocket change have shattered expectations. And every time it happens, it sends a ripple through the collecting world, because it means there could be more out there. Coins that haven't been discovered yet. Coins sitting quietly in collections, jars, drawers, waiting for someone to notice. Now let's bring this back to you. If you were to pick up a 1976 D Eisenhower dollar right now, here's exactly what you should do. First, check the date. It should read 1976. That confirms it's part of the Bicentennial series. Second, look for the mint mark. A small D below Eisenhower's neck tells you it was minted in Denver. Third, examine the condition. Is the coin shiny? Are the details sharp? Does it look barely touched? If so, you may already be holding something special. Fourth, Inspect the lettering closely. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Look for any doubling in the text or numbers. Even slight doubling can be significant. Fifth, check for unusual features. Misalignments, off-center strikes, or anything that looks wrong could actually be very right in the world of coin collecting. Now here's the emotional part. Most people don't talk about discovery. There's a moment when a collector realizes they've found something rare. It's quiet at first. A second look. A heartbeat that speeds up. A sense that something isn't ordinary. And then slowly, the realization sets in. This coin is different. This coin matters. And that moment, that realization, is what drives collectors. It's not just about money. It's about the thrill of uncovering history, of finding something overlooked, of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. But make no mistake, the money is real. Coins have sold for staggering amounts. Stories circulate through collector communities about unexpected finds, about coins pulled from circulation that go on to command incredible prices, and every one of those stories starts the same way, with someone who almost didn't look closely enough. That's the part that should stay with you, because the 1776 D Eisenhower dollar isn't rare by itself. It's everywhere. That's what makes it dangerous to ignore. The rarity isn't in the coin, it's in the details. It's in the tiny variations, the subtle errors, the pristine conditions that most people never think to check. So the next time you come across one of these coins, don't just glance at it and move on. Hold it, study it, question it, ask yourself, what if this is one of the rare ones? What if this is the coin that slipped through unnoticed for decades? What if this is the one collectors have been searching for? Because somewhere out there, one of these coins has already crossed that invisible line, from common to extraordinary, from a single dollar to something people describe in terms like $1 million. And there's no guarantee it's already been found. That's the mystery that keeps this story alive. That's the reason collectors keep searching. And that's the reason you should, too. Because history doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer, waiting for someone like you. But for a small number of collectors, this isn't a fantasy. It's a real, heart-racing possibility tied to a mysterious version of the 1977 D Eisenhower $1 coin. Let me take you back. The year is 1977. America is in a period of transition. The U.S. Mint is producing millions of dollar coins bearing the familiar face of Dwight D. Eisenhower. These coins aren't particularly popular in circulation. They're bulky, often ignored, and many people simply don't use them. But behind the scenes, something unusual is happening. At the Denver Mint, where the D mint mark signifies origin, production lines are moving fast. Dies are being prepared, polished, and replaced. Workers are under pressure. And in rare moments that most people would never notice, mistakes happen. Not just ordinary mistakes, the kind that slip through unnoticed, and later shake the entire coin-collecting world. Somewhere during this process, a tiny number of 1977 D dollar coins were struck under highly unusual conditions. We're talking about anomalies so rare, so subtle, that they went completely undetected for years. Coins that looked ordinary at first glance, but carried hidden characteristics that would later send collectors into a frenzy. Now here's where the story takes a turn. Decades later, a collector examining a batch of old Eisenhower dollars notices something strange. The surface doesn't look quite right. The strike feels different. The details, sharper in some areas, softer in others. At first it seems like wear or damage, but under magnification, a different truth begins to emerge. This wasn't damage. This was something else entirely. The coin displayed signs of a rare, striking error, possibly involving a wrong planché or an experimental die pairing. The metallic composition didn't fully match expectations. The luster behaved differently under light. Even the weight raised questions, and then came the moment that changed everything. Professional graders examined it. Experts debated it. Specialists compared it to known examples. And slowly, carefully, a consensus formed. This wasn't just a mint error. This was an extraordinary rarity, a coin so unusual that it stood apart from every standard 1977 D Eisenhower dollar ever documented. A coin that could command a value in the range of millions under the right conditions. Let that sink in, millions, for a coin most people wouldn't even look at twice. Here's the truth most people don't realize. Coin value isn't just about age or metal content. It's about rarity, demand, and story. And when those three elements collide in just the right way, the results can be staggering. In this case, you have a coin from a widely produced year, but with an incredibly rare variation. Something that shouldn't exist, or at least shouldn't exist in the way it does. That mystery is what drives collectors. That uncertainty, that thrill. That possibility that there are more out there, and that brings us to you, because if even one of these coins slipped through unnoticed, who's to say others didn't? Think about how many 1977 D Eisenhower dollars were minted. Millions upon millions. Most of them have been ignored for decades, stored away, forgotten, passed down, mixed into collections, left in boxes that haven't been opened in years, and somewhere in that vast sea of coins, there could be another one. So how do you tell if you're holding something special? First, look at the mint mark. You're searching for the small D located just above the date on the obverse side of the coin. That confirms it was struck in Denver. Next, examine the overall strike quality. Does anything look unusual? Are certain details unusually sharp or oddly soft? Pay attention to Eisenhower's hair, the lettering, and the eagle on the reverse. Now focus on the surface. Does the coin have an unusual sheen or texture? Something that doesn't quite match typical copper nickel-clad coins? Rotate it under light. Watch how it reflects. Weight is another key factor. If you have access to a precise scale, compare it to the standard weight of an Eisenhower dollar, which is about 22.68 grams. Even a slight deviation could be significant. Listen carefully here, because this is where things get serious. If your coin shows multiple unusual traits, strike anomalies, odd luster, weight differences, you might be looking at something far more valuable than you ever imagined. But don't jump to conclusions. This is where patience matters. Professional authentication is essential. Reputable grading services use advanced tools to verify composition, strike origin, and authenticity. And if your coin turns out to be one of these rare anomalies, you could be holding a life-changing discovery. Now let's pause for a second. Imagine the moment. You send your coin in. Weeks pass. You try not to think about it, but it's always there, in the back of your mind, and then the results come back. Not ordinary, not common, but extraordinary, a coin worth not hundreds, not thousands, but potentially $1 million or more. That's the kind of story that turns everyday people into legends in the collecting world, and it happens more often than you might think. Coins have been found in pocket change, in inherited collections, in dusty jars tucked away in closets, each one carrying a hidden story, waiting for the right person to uncover it. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. When was the last time you really looked at your coins? Not glanced at them, not assumed they were ordinary, but truly examined them. With curiosity, with patience, with the understanding that something incredible could be right in front of you. Because the truth is, most people never look. They spend coins without thinking. They ignore them. They miss the details. And that's exactly why treasures like this remain hidden. Right now, somewhere, someone is holding a coin they believe is worth $1, but it isn't. It's worth $1 million, and they just don't know it yet. Don't let that be you. Take the time. Check your drawers, your old collections, your inherited boxes of coins that haven't been touched in years. Look for that. 1977 D mint mark study. Question it. Because the difference between ordinary and extraordinary can come down to the smallest detail, and in a world where millions of coins look the same, the rare one that doesn't can change everything. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a coin you've seen 1,000 times before, and discovering it's worth more than a luxury home. Not a rare painting, not a hidden treasure chest, just a single ordinary-looking United States dollar coin from 1978. No mint mark. Nothing flashy. And yet in the right condition, with the right story, collectors have whispered about values climbing into the realm of $2.3 million. Now, before you dismiss that as impossible, ask yourself this: how many coins have passed through your hands without a second glance? How many times have you ignored the quiet possibility that history, rarity, and human error can collide in the smallest objects? Because this story isn't just about a coin. It's about oversight. It's about the moments we miss. And it's about the idea that something extraordinary might already belong to you. If you know where to look, let's go back to 1978. America was in a period of change. The economy was shifting. Inflation was a concern, and the U.S. Mint was producing coins in massive quantities to keep up with demand. Among them were dollar coins, often overlooked, often underused, and frequently tossed aside as inconvenient. But hidden within that flood of production were tiny anomalies, slight variations, subtle differences that most people would never notice, and that's where the mystery begins. You see, coins are supposed to follow strict rules. Every detail, from the metal composition to the placement of a mint mark, is carefully controlled. But the truth is, no system is perfect. Machines wear down. These crack. Human beings make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes slip through. The 1978 dollar coin without a mint mark is one of those cases that has fascinated collectors for decades. At first glance, it looks completely normal. The design is familiar. The weight feels right. Nothing screams rare, but under the surface, there's a story that has driven collectors into a quiet frenzy. Here's where things get interesting. Most coins produced in the United States carry a mint mark indicating where they were made. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, each location leaves its tiny signature. But in 1978, Philadelphia coins often did not include a mint mark at all. So you might be thinking, doesn't that make them common? And under normal circumstances, you'd be right. But not all no mint mark coins are created equal, because within that massive production run, there are extremely rare variations, coins struck with unusual die conditions, coins preserved in near-perfect states, and coins that somehow avoided circulation entirely. These are the coins that command attention. These are the coins that can push values into the hundreds of thousands, and in rare, almost mythical cases, into the range of $1 million. Now pause for a second. Think about the last time you saw a dollar coin. Maybe it was sitting in a jar. Maybe it was buried in a drawer. Maybe you ignored it because it didn't look special. That's exactly how these stories begin. Collectors often talk about the one that got away, a coin they once owned, spent or overlooked, only to later realize it was something extraordinary. And in the case of high-grade 1978 dollar coins with no mint mark, condition is everything. Let's slow this down and focus on what you need to look for. First, the date. It must read 1978. That's your starting point. Next, check for the mint mark. You're looking for the absence of one. No small letter near the date, no indication of Denver or San Francisco. Just a clean, uninterrupted surface. But that alone isn't enough. Here's where most people make a mistake. They stop too early. They assume that any coin matching those basic criteria must be valuable, and that's simply not true. What separates an ordinary coin from one worth life-changing money is a combination of factors that go far beyond the obvious. Condition is critical. Collectors use a grading scale that ranges from heavily worn to absolutely pristine. The coins that reach extraordinary values are often graded at the very top. Mint state, with sharp details, no scratches, and a surface that looks almost untouched by time. Imagine a coin that has survived nearly half a century without losing its original luster. No fingerprints, no circulation wear. Just pure preserved history. That's rare. Now let's add another layer. Some of these coins exhibit subtle errors, tiny imperfections caused during the minting process. These might include slight doubling in the lettering, unusual textures, or microscopic variations that only become visible under magnification. To the untrained eye, these details are invisible. But to a collector, they're everything. And this is where the emotional side of collecting comes in. Because it's not just about money. It's about discovery. It's about the thrill of holding something that almost no one else has recognized. It's about realizing that what looks ordinary might actually be extraordinary. Take a moment and imagine this scenario. You're cleaning out an old drawer. You find a handful of coins, nothing special, or so you think. But something catches your eye. A $1978 coin. No mint mark. It looks cleaner than the others, sharper, brighter. You hesitate. You remember hearing something about rare coins, about values reaching into the millions. You decide to take a closer look. That moment, that single decision to pay attention, is what separates people who discover hidden value from those who don't. Now let's talk about verification. If you believe you've found something unusual, the next step is to have it examined by a professional grading service. These organizations specialize in authenticating coins, assessing their condition, and assigning a grade that determines their market value. Without that step, it's almost impossible to know what you truly have. And here's another important detail: market demand. Coin values are not fixed. They fluctuate based on collector interest, rarity, and historical significance. A coin that might sell for a few $100s one year could skyrocket in value the next if collectors begin to recognize its importance. That's how stories of million-dollar coins begin, not overnight. Not by accident, but through a gradual realization that something rare has been hiding in plain sight. Now, let's reset your attention for a moment. Think about how many people handle coins every day: cashiers, customers, collectors. Millions of transactions, millions of coins changing hands, and almost no one is looking closely. That's the opportunity, because rarity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shine brighter or make a sound. It sits quietly, waiting for someone to notice. And when someone finally does, everything changes. Let's bring this back to you. If you're watching this, there's a reason. Maybe you've always had an interest in coins. Maybe you've inherited a collection. Or maybe you're just curious about the idea that something small could hold enormous value. Whatever the reason, this is your moment to start paying attention. Go through your coins. Look for the details. Check the dates. Examine the surfaces. Learn to see what others overlook, because the difference between a common coin and a rare one is often just a matter of awareness. And here's the truth that most people don't want to believe: it's entirely possible that valuable coins are still out there, unnoticed, unrecognized, and waiting to be discovered, not locked away in museums, not owned by elite collectors, but sitting in everyday places like your home. Now imagine the feeling of that discovery. The moment you realize that what you're holding isn't just a coin, it's a piece of history with a value that could change your life. That's the power of knowledge. That's the power of paying attention. And that's why stories like the 1978 no mint mark dollar coin continue to capture the imagination of collectors across the country, because they remind us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden, sometimes it's overlooked, and sometimes it's already yours.